Hello everyone, welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we discuss Magic's most competitive tribe and help the whole community become better Merfolk players. I'm Kody, one of the co-hosts of the show, and not Kody Smith on Twitter.
And in his first audition to replace Matt, please follow at Matthew Caudill 8 on Twitter. I am Dorian, who you can follow at Crinkle Biscuit with a K.
Yeah, the crinklest of biscuits. Yeah, Matt is on assignment out elsewhere. So we've called in our good friend Dorian, who's a local Merfolk player here in Oklahoma. So thank you, Dorian, for hanging out and talking with us today about the previews for the upcoming set, the War of the Spark. Dorian, like what brings you to the show? How long have you been playing Merfolk?
All right. No, thank you again for the invite. Pretty happy to be here. It's honestly a pleasure. I love playing this deck. I love listening to the podcast. I was mentioning this offline, but I'll go ahead and mention online. I've been listening since episode 4. When I found you guys through a just random, Magic podcast search, and you guys happen to be like the 5th on the list. I've been playing Merfolk since 2014 like right before Eldrazi Winter is when I finished my deck, and then, we had the invasion, so...
Yeah, that's. I think 2014 is like the harbinger point of, no pun intended, to harbinger the tides. But I think like that's like that. It seems like that's the big point for a lot of people to play Merfolk, and I think Master of Waves is such a big part of our deck, and that's kind of when Master of Waves came out. And so I don't know. There's no scientific data to point to Master of Waves being the point where a lot of people were like, yeah, Merfolk is my deck. But like I feel from my minimal research that Master of Waves is kind of the turning point. Was that the case for you?
Not really. I had originally gotten out of Magic around 2011, 2012, when I joined the military. I had to pay off some debts, and my Magic collection was a giant pot of money to get that debt record to 0. And then I had about half the Merfolk deck built, looking back at it, because it was all the Lorwyn pieces as well. And then when I got back into it, it was like, I like these fish guys, see what they can do. And it's like, how much are they today? And then I saw the prices, and I was like, oh, this hurts. Because I think at the time, Curse Catcher was still about, what's it called? $9.
Yeah.
It was up there for a while.
Yeah, now it's not quite that bad.
No.
And I mean, you're even kind of on the fence as whether you're playing it. I mean, I know that you play it personally. We talked at F&M just a few days ago, and you were still playing a few of them in your deck. But Curse Catcher is kind of one of those movable slots now. It's not as much of a fixture as it was.
Oh yes, no. The competition that Curse Catcher has now is for sure, Benthic Biomancer, as well as the
Mistcaller.
Kumena's Speaker if you are in blue-green, and Mistcaller, which I ran in its spot for, I want to say, about a month.
Yeah, I did try out some Swolfolk as well. It didn't. We'll I'm sure we'll discuss it on a further episode of the show. How close blue green came to being, like a playable archetype, and it's just so short, just barely. But thank you for introducing yourself. We're glad to have you on the show to talk about our topic tonight. Remember that you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is at FishCastMTG. Make sure to rate us and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast apps. That would be a great way to support the show for free. To support us greater than for free, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/fishcastmtg. There you can support the show for as little as $1 a month, and as little as $2 a month you get the show a few days early and ad free. And as well, you could find us on Inked Gaming, and Cardamajigs, where you can find our playmats and tokens respectively. And when you use those affiliate links that you will find in the show notes, then you are giving us a little bit back, as well as using the code FishCast10 on Inked Gaming. That gives you 10% off your order and helps support the show. To celebrate a new patron, we are having him pick our random merfolk. So patron Jeff, thank you, Jeff, for becoming a patron. You are super awesome.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff is awesome, and he's a patron. So we had an awesome little chat online, and he picked our random merfolk, which it was kind of a unique one. And again, as we've said before, most merfolk are fairly garbage. And that's just how Magic is. You know, when you go to the commons and uncommons, you're not going to find all stars in every level. But Dorian, can you go ahead and read our random merfolk number 32?
Yes, so we have an old merfolk from Mercadian Masks era called Darting Merfolk, and it is a 1 and a blue 1/1 that has an activated ability of 1 blue and return Darting Merfolk to its owner's hand.
Yep, and it has flavor text. You might as well try to catch water with a net.
Yes. This one is actually a pretty unique one. I looked up some of the history of it, and it actually happened to be played in a World Championship deck from 2001, Alex Forte's Merfolk Opposition deck from World Championship Toronto. He ran 2 of them in the main board.
Oh wow! What was it during that time when they like made you play cards from the most recent set, or what? I mean, was there a reason that this card was played?
It was mainly due to the fact that it was a just 1 toughness creature, and it had its activated ability, I guess, got around the other way this deck worked, because it was the Merfolk opposition was kind of like a prison deck almost at standard then, or around the time. I think they still called it Type 2.
Mm-hmm. Well, it is a unique ability. I mean, this is something that you could technically play in Pauper, although I don't necessarily think that there'd be a reason to specifically play this, unless you had something like a unilateral sack ability, that you could bounce it in response and force your opponent to sack. But even then, like that's really reaching.
Yes, no, that's kind of a risky one. I think what this one was used for was just to, when you tapped the creature to activate opposition's ability, you could then pay a blue, return it to your hand, and then recast it as a blocker for anything, that was about to come back at you, if needed. The idea, I think, was just to have it as a way of, continually keeping a creature in play if you were playing against a removal heavy deck, which the Alex Forte lost to in the finals of the 2001 World Championship.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, there's basically no reason to play this card now, correct? There's so many better versions of Darting Merfolk. Paying 2 mana for a 1/1 that has a marginal upside is not something we're doing today, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you just want to play a jank legacy deck where you're using Deep Root Elite with this, and you can just keep triggering the +1/+1 counter effect. There's almost no reason to play this.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. All right, so Dorian, today our topic is War of the Spark. It is the upcoming set from Magic the Gathering, and we're going to be talking about the cards in this set. So first off, we're going to be talking about the Merfolk from this set, which there are 2. So actually, Matt won that bet. If you listened last week, I said that there were going to be 3 Merfolk in this set. At the time of recording, when we recorded that episode last Sunday, or last Monday rather, we only knew of the Augur of Bolas reprint. So we didn't have like a full, we didn't have the full set revealed or anything like that. So I had said that there were going to be 3 Merfolk in the set. Matt correctly predicted that there were 2 Merfolk in the set, and here we are. So Dorian and I are going to go down. We're going to talk about the 2 Merfolk, and then we're also going to talk about cards that we think might be in standard, and maybe possibly formats beyond that. But just cards that we think would fit into the Merfolk mold. So,
Yep.
are you ready to start about the Merfolk there?
I am ready. However, I do want to mention I think the bet is still live because about we're still about 100 cards away from the full spoiler being revealed.
Oh snap! I thought all the cards were revealed.
Not just yet. I think the pre-release is supposed to be in the last week of this month, so we have
Okay.
about 2 weeks left of spoilers.
Oh geez. Okay. Well, we're gonna talk about what is revealed now, and honestly, I don't know what they could reveal that would be of consequence between now and then, but we'll see, and we'll talk about what we have now, and anything else we're open to talk about on Twitter at FishcastMTG or on Facebook, facebook.com/FishcastMTG. Yeah, we're totally open to talk about all sorts of fun stuff. So first off is a reprint. Do you want to read this one, or do you want me to start off?
I can go ahead and read this one and all, and then you do the brand new Merfolk. Oh. So the reprint is Augur of Bolas. That was the one that was mentioned last week, right?
That's correct.
Yes. So for those that missed last week's episode, Augur of Bolas has it's an uncommon this time, or as it was originally, but it is a 1 and a blue Merfolk wizard, 1/3 that has when Augur of Bolas enters the battlefield, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal an instant or sorcery card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. And this one's flavor text is there is no future save the one my master wills.
I really like that, but I think that the only reason this card was added was due to the addition of it being a bolus heavy set.
I think so. I like what this card can do for Popper. I liked what it was able to do, I think, when it was released in 2012 or 2013 standard. Just to look at the top 3 and filter out either bad cards or take, the dig for the card you were looking for, but has not really made a significant splash in our type of deck.
Yeah, I think like if you were playing a very controlling version of Merfolk, like a blue white or blue black version, Augur Bolus would be a better include, because it does have a big butt. 3 toughness is nothing to sneeze at for 2 mana.
Oh yes,
Um,
especially with the Lord pumps.
yeah, with Lord Pumps, it's good. But I mean, even in a slower controlling deck, if you're digging for specific pieces like a Chupacabra or something like along those lines, like a removal spell, having a 1/3 back to kind of block, turn 2, turn 3 is not terrible. And like having it reprinted for purposes like Popper is not bad as well. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good card.
Yes, yes. No.
I I
Just
wouldn't.
seeing the 1/3 against Burn is something I would like. So if you want to run this as your 2-drop in, it's to me, it would be just a weird janky thing where you go, turn to Augur, and then you're looking for like an incubation incongruity off of that to then use it the turn after that. I think would be kind of weird, but I mean, if you want to do something like that, you are digging, 8 cards deep in your standard deck.
Yeah, and if you were playing blue green as we're suggesting, or is kind of suggested with how Merfolk has gone in standard recently, if you're playing a more spell heavy version with like Deeproot Champion, this would be a good way to kind of filter out spells that are too expensive currently. But you can kind of filter lands to the top, or you can filter like Adventurous Impulse or pump spells towards the top. It's a good way to just filter your draws. And at 2 mana for a 1/3, you're really not losing a lot. So if you're playing this card in blue-green, which is kind of where Wizards wants Merfolk right now, and at least in Standard, not only does it trigger Wizard Retort, as you had reminded me offline, basically Counterspell in Standard, but it does activate Naban, Dean of Iteration, which is kind of a big piece in my blue-white lawful, what I call lawful folk. It's blue-white, Merfolk. And Naban, Deed of Iteration is a legendary creature human wizard that costs 1 and a blue, and he's a legendary human wizard. And it's a 2/1 that says if a wizard entering the battlefield under your control causes a triggered ability or permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So does that mean that Augur Bulls triggers twice?
Yes, it will trigger twice as long as Naban is in play. Well, and having 2 triggers, what type of spells would you want to find in your deck?
I don't know if anything in Standard would really matter. Like, I mean, there's nothing that says like if you shuffle your deck, there's no effects that at least in Standard are really important for that type of ability, I guess. I mean, unless you know of anything.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, at least in white. The only ones I really would care about would be something like Settle the Wreckage. No, but if you're playing this on like turn 2, turn 3, your opponent's going to know what's coming.
Yeah, and again, in a controlling deck like blue white or blue black, it's just a way to set up a quote unquote roadblock. Having a 1/3 is kind of the toughness stops a lot of things, and it also kind of filters your draws, so that's good as well. But I think this card's pretty good, other than just kind of not really fitting in the blue green build like a traditional blue green build.
Yeah.
All right, so our next card is Merfolk Skydiver. This is a new one for War of the Spark, and it is blue and a green for a Merfolk Mutant 1/1. And it has flying. When Merfolk Skydiver enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It also has Proliferate for 3 green-blue. So now Proliferate basically says choose any number of permanents and or players, then give each another counter of each kind already there. So it basically just you choose how many things that already have counters, and then you just add one more. What do you think of this card just on first read?
So, I want to like this card a lot. I like that it's got evasion. First and foremost, I want to say that the artwork is pretty awesome. And all just the flying merfolk as lightning is striking in the background is to me a master of like wind and sky torrent kind of thing. With that being said, this is if you have no other creatures, it's a bear that you can in the late game pay to make it bigger than a bear.
Yeah, so to be clear, you can choose itself as its target, correct?
Yes.
So at absolute worst, it's a flying bear.
Yes. So in for limited purposes, this is going to be a great card because it is a 2 mana 2/2 flyer if you have no other creatures out.
In a color pair that cares about proliferating.
Yes.
So I think your read on this is really good. And I've said this on Twitter. I think the day that it was spoiled, a bunch of people tagged me in this, and thank you for everybody who tagged me. I appreciate being included in the conversation. It's fine.
Where was my invite? Just
make sure to tag at Crinkle Biscuit next time we talk about Merfolk Skydiver. With Merfolk Skydiver, at least it's one of those cards that I think is good. I think it's a good card. I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with it. Just if we're talking about Standard, Because I don't even think that this card would be played in modern Swolfolk or in any form of other format, unless you're playing like Flying Men and Canadian Highlander or something like that. Uh, like I just the 2-drop slot is so crowded for standard. I mean, we already have Merfolk Mistbinder, the Lord. We have uh, Deeproot Elite, which puts counters on things. So we're not replacing that. We
And
have
all of those are a 4 of, so that's 12 slot, or that's just 12 spots in that deck already.
exactly, and then we have Silvergill Adept, which you're never cutting from a Merfolk deck. I'm sorry, if you cut Silvergill, like there's problems. So there's already 12 cards out of 60 that you have to have in your deck, basically. Um, and on top of that,
16, yeah.
yes, or 16. Well, 12 from just those three. And so if you're adding Merfolk Skydiver, like you can't have that many 2-drops in a deck and not run into problems of your curve, not including any control pieces like Quench. There's just so much to do at the 2-drop slot that I think Merfolk Skydiver just doesn't land in standard. I mean, that's my
No,
opinion.
not so much. The kind of deck that you want this to be built around is a Merfolk counters deck, where you are playing like a um, Mistcloak Herald or Comena Speaker alongside the Jade Light Rangers. Then you have the Merfolk Skydiver, Deeproot Elite with what was the one you were talking about? The Merfolk Mistbinder, which is the Blue Green Lord. And you're just trying to make, big creatures with evasion. I could see River Sneak making its way in this type of deck as well. But your whole point is to overload with Merfolk, maybe have Kumena, Tyrant of Araska as your top end, so they can, if you get to the late game, you've got, a bunch of creatures, and then you can swing and proliferate.
Yeah, my biggest thing is actually the proliferate cost, because like honestly, this card is not a bad card. Having an evasive threat is always good, and especially a threat that comes with a pump, which is like adding a counter. So you could add a counter to an unblockable creature, like you said. Um, with one of the unblockable Merfolk, or even put it on one of the hexproof Merfolk, just to from deep root waters to not have it messed with. But the thing is just like even in the deck that you've just said, we already have basically 12 slots eaten up by 2-drops. Do you want almost a third of your deck being 2-drops? I mean, I'm not saying that that's bad, but just like from a standpoint of like you also need interaction like counter spells, bounce spells, enchantments. You're kind of running out of space.
Oh, without a doubt. Well, you have, I think the standard deck already has 30-ish creatures, and they're all fighting for room.
Yeah, and I mean even like you said, like having Kumena as your top end and having 1-drops like Kumena Speaker in the front, you're really hard pressed to find room for this. And again, I will test it because that's the kind of person I am. But uh, you know, it's like you know, like
It's
it's good, but it's not good enough. I don't think to you know find a spot in a traditional deck.
Yes, no, this is the type of card I want to like. It has everything, hits everything that I like about this card, being Simic colors, best guild in the entire, multiverse. Well, fight me. And having the ability to like give +1/+1 counters to anything, and then proliferate, which was a mechanic I loved when I first saw it in the Scars of Mirrodin block.
Yeah, so I think like this one is kind of like a mid tier, Merfolk. Like it's fine, it's not great. It's a slight improve. It's a slightly better Gaia's Skyfolk. With I like, even though I like the art, it's slightly worse art than Gaia's Skyfolk. It's fine.
Well,
It's fine.
no. No, yeah, I mean, you got the OG art for Gaia Skyfolk, and that's that is iconic in itself.
So now
Oh,
we're going to talk about some cards that we think, this is the list that both myself and Dorian contributed to. And these are cards that we think might sneak into standard Merfolk. And so we're going to start off with Lazatep Plating, which is 1 in a blue for an instant at uncommon. And it has Amass 1. So Amass 1 says put a +1/+1 counter on an army you control. If you don't control one, create a 0/0 black zombie army creature token first. So it's kind of like a living weapon, where when you cast it, you create a 0/0 germ and you equip it immediately to that germ. So basically, you're making a free 1/1 zombie army creature. But that's not why we're playing this in Merfolk. The reason that I think that this might be playable is that it says you and permanents you control gain hexproof until end of turn. Now, we up until very recently had a card that was very similar to this, and it was
heroic intervention.
heroic intervention. That for some reason, up until the moment I said it, the card slipped out of my head. So we had heroic intervention, which was very similar, except it also gave things indestructible. But that card was very important because being able to give things hexproof is really good, including yourself. Now this doesn't quite give hexproof or give indestructible like heroic intervention did, but I think that this card might see some play. It's a very interesting card, at least on my end.
Yes, the hexproof is just a great way to counter, things that at with this being at instant speed too, is a great way to do it in response to something like Settle the Wreckage, where it's a target player, exiles their attacking creatures.
Basically, I think this would be more for limited purposes anyway. But at 2 mana for an instant speed, I think this is fine.
Yes. I mean, and at worst, it is an instant speed, make a 1/1, token. That with the proliferate ability, if you want to build around that kind of thing, can be used to your advantage.
Yeah. So I mean, last steps planning, I think it's fine. I think it's something that could be used and might be used if there's a like a board wide damage effect or like if there's discard effects that are fairly strong and standard that might be a good way to kind of get around those sort of things. Um, yeah, I mean, do you think anything specific about this about Lazadip's plating?
Aside from using it for just giving yourself and your permanent hexproof, I honestly don't really see what else I could use it for. No, like it doesn't have a cycling ability, which would makes every card better. So
Cycling is pretty great. So we'll move on to the next card. What is a card that you think would be good from this set?
um well, I mean, let's just keep going down the I guess continuing down the list.
Okay,
I guess in
just
the order we
in
had.
order that they're there.
Yes.
All right. So do you want to read the next card then?
So I can. This is a card called Neoform that was recently spoiled. I saw this one being discussed on the Merfolk Facebook page for a little bit, and I joined in like in a minor role. Didn't really have much else to say other than what could we use this for. But it is a blue and a green uncommon sorcery that has as an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Then you can search your library for a creature card with a converted mana cost equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature CMC. Put that card into the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, and then shuffle your library.
Yeah.
And
what do you think about this?
this is another one kind of like Gaia's Skyfolk. It's one where we would really need to be building around this +1/+1 counter theme to get any use from the very last bit of this spell. Other than that, this is, I mean, I guess Vanifar, Prime Speaker Vanifar, just on a budget.
Yeah, I agree with that. But to me, like honestly, you wouldn't have to work too hard to get around this. If you're playing with deeper waters, like you're getting a bunch of 1/1 tokens, so that this puts you into again what we already said is a very heavy 2/2 or sorry, 2 mana cost area of our deck. So like let's say well, I guess those tokens will be 0 drops, so never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, so yeah, that's the way this thing would work. Is the token, you would sack a token as part of the casting of this spell, and then you get what, Jade Light Ranger, or not Jade Light Ranger, Kumena Speaker, um, the what was the one I was just talking about? The Jade Light, that the 1-drop puts a token on something else.
Jade Bearer.
Jade Bearer. Thanks.
I know my Merfolk 1 drops.
Yes. So, but yeah, you're either finding, Miss Cloak Herald, Miss Caller, Commander Speaker, and Jade Bearer. Not the best kind of thing you want to sack a token for, to get one of those 4 creatures.
And I guess that kind of shows. I guess that kind of shows like the high end example of this is sacking a Jade Bearer after you put a +1/+1 counter on something else, because like Jade Bearer is only good after turn 1. You can't play a Jade Bearer turn 1 and be like super happy about it. So it's like you already have to like say wait until turn 2, play a Silvergo Adept, and then reveal your Jade Bearer. Play Jade Bearer, put a counter on Silvergo Adept, and then cast Neoform to get rid of your Jade Bearer to play another Silvergo Adept, a Deep Root Elite, something like that.
No, the line of play for something like that I could see being at the quickest a turn 3 play, where you've got Jade Bearer, you give your +1/+1 counter to another Merfolk, then you cast Neoform, sacrificing the Jade Bearer to get out a Mistbinder. No.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then you have
that's basically what I meant. Is like you're like at turn 3 is earliest that Neoform becomes viable, and at turn 3, I'm not saying in standard that that's terribly quick or anything like that, but you're having to do a fair bit of setup for Neoform to be good.
No, and still, I think that line of play could be good though, because you have, let's say turn 1, Commander Speaker, turn 2, you do, like what you were saying was the Silvergill Adept, revealing Jade Bearer, and then you have, your, 4 power in play, but then turn 3, you do Jade Bearer, hit one of the other 2 creatures, making it 5 power, and then you sack that with Neoform to get out Merfolk Mistbinder, and now you have a total of a 7 power that you can attack with, and then a 3/3 sitting in the back.
Yeah, so like it's not a terrible card. I think that there will be definitely ways to play around with this card, at least in standard. I don't know if this is what pushes Swolfolk to be a thing in modern, but it's definitely an interesting card. And again, like you said, it gives those Vanifear decks another boost up.
Yes, yeah. This is something that's gonna be, Vanifear 4 through 8 to just find whatever toolbox creatures you need. And seeing it in Swolfolk, I honestly don't know what we'd even want to search for with that. We are either getting a Lord, or Rajiri, which is a Lord.
Yeah, it would be basically just helping to. I mean, it's sorcery speed, so that kind of limits its capacity in modern. At least in modern, if you were playing it in modern, if it was an instant speed, then you could like target your lord in response to a path or something like that, and then get a Jerry or something like that to help smooth out that change. But like in modern, being a sorcery just kind of hampers it too much, I think.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, the next card that I picked is No Escape. It costs 2 and a blue for an instant. Counter target creature or planeswalker spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Scry 1. So the reason I picked this card, I mean, it costs 3, which is a little bit expensive. But we don't know where the standard is going to be at. And I think that if the standard is as planeswalker heavy as I think it's going to be, then No Escape might be a good way to have a counterspell up to just like stop an enchantment. Like, I mean, all the uncommon and some of the rare planeswalkers that have been spoiled so far are basically enchantments. So it stops them from hitting the field. And some of them do have fairly backbreaking effects, like the Nahiri planeswalker and a few of the planeswalkers we're going to be discussing later in this episode have kind of backbreaking effects. So like this is a way to get rid of them permanently. Like you cannot get them back in any fashion.
Yes, I see this more as like a sideboard option to deal with the Is It Drake's deck and whatever planeswalkers we are going to see in this new standard environment.
Yeah, I don't think I don't remember if all the planeswalkers have been revealed yet. But definitely just being able to counter something. And then on top of that, just scrying one, just like, oh, I'm at too many lands. I'm just going to get rid of this land. Or, I need to hit a land. This 4-drop is not going to handle it. Like, let's get past this. So No Escape kind of gives you an escape if your deck is not performing the way it should.
Yes, Scry is another one of those like evergreen abilities that everyone's just happy to see on the card.
Yeah, so adding Scry to any card makes it so much better in my opinion. But I think it's fine, like you said, best at sideboard, but I think it might see some play in standard. I think that was a much simpler conversation than Neoform.
Yes.
The next one that's on our list is Vivian's Arcbow. Do you want to read it?
Yes, so Vivian's Arcbow is a legendary artifact for 1 and a green, and it has the activated ability of X, tap this artifact, discard a card, and then look at the top X cards of your library. You may put a creature card with converted mana cost X or less from among them onto the battlefield, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
So the reason I added this to this list is it lets you basically fetch a lord. With the way that modern or standard Merfolk works, generally you're running 3 to 4 Kumenas, right? And
yes,
Kumena has the ability of having 4 toughness, which is really hard to deal with damage-wise. So sometimes you can find yourself having a few extra Kumenas in your hand, just by drawing cards or what have you. And so Vivian's Arcbow gives you a way to discard an extra Kumena. It's
Seafloor Oracle.
Yeah, Seafloor Oracle, or the 3-drop one is Kapala.
Oh, he was from the first one. Kapala, well, he actually had the like I think it was a Frost Titan effect.
No, Kapala has a taxing effect. So that's the spells your opponents cast that target a Merfolk you control cost 2 more to cast. Abilities your opponents activate that target a Merfolk you control have 2 more to activate. It was the one that everyone thought for a while that was going to replace like Kira.
Yes, which sadly never got there.
Yeah.
The hard counter is always better than a taxing effect.
Yeah. So in this deck, if you're playing, the way that standard Merfolk works right now, if you're playing, lots of Kumena or Kopalas, and then even Seafloor Oracles, the general way that it works is sometimes you'll just draw extras, and with Kumena having 4 toughness and Kopala taxing, sometimes those cards can just stack up on the battlefield and they won't be dealt with. So this card, Vivian's Arcbow, is kind of a way to turn those into lords or turn them into kumenas, just extra cards that give you value. So I thought maybe Vivian's Arcbow could be seen as like a two of in standard. It would definitely be an interesting addition, at least.
I could see this at most being a two of. I like that it's an instant speed effect. It seems like a fair birthing pod type of effect as well.
Yeah, because you search for something that costs less, and also you can't you have basically, except for Augur Bolus, you don't have a lot of ways to stack the top of your deck, which maybe Vivian's Arcbow works really brilliantly with Augur Bolus.
Well, Augur puts everything at the bottom of the library, so you wouldn't be able to get that.
Oh, that's correct. You're right.
Oh.
And in any case, Vivian's Arcbow definitely, we have a density of 2 drops and a few 3 drops. So like if you're hitting something off of a spare Kumena, then you're bound to hit either a Deeper Elite or a Silvergill Adept or something like that. Then you're and you put it on the battlefield, which is great. Like you can just hit a Lord off the top, and that can totally change how your deck plays.
Oh yes, having this as before damage for blockers, and then you can just search for the Lord you need to make sure your guys are safe, or just trigger a Deep Root Elite to make one of your creatures that would have died, safe.
Yeah, so I think it's a pretty good card. Next, we're going to go on to a card that you added, Dorian. Vivian, Champion of the Wilds.
Yes. This one is one that I'm actually a little bit excited for. Let me go find her again. I had her pulled up so I could read exactly what she said, and then I moved from that page.
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
Yes. So she is a legendary planeswalker for 2 and a green. Her static ability is the one I like, and that is you may cast creature spells as though they had flash. Her starting loyalty is 4, and she has 2 activated abilities. Her +1 is until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gains vigilance and reach. And then her -2 is look at the top 3 cards of your library, exile 1 face down, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. For as long as it remains exiled, you may look at that card, and you may cast it if it's a creature card.
Well, that's pretty sweet. It kind of gives you a little bit of reach, and interacting with its static ability, you can just kind of like surprise in a Lord or just even any blocker really is very good. So I agree with you. I think Vivian is a great card.
Yes, I would for sure run 2 of these in a deck to test her out. I could see an argument going up to 3, but like the way this deck works, if you're putting her in place, once you drop her, she's kind of a dead card on turn 3. Other than, giving one creature vigilance and reach so that you can keep a blocker against whatever they have that's flying.
Yeah, and I mean, at least in standard, you're not as in a bind on turn 3 unless you're playing against like mono red. So I think Vivian is a good card. I believe me, I think that the ability is super strong. Being able to flash in a Lord and then make blocks after your opponent taps out and attacks is pretty sweet. So I really do think that this is a great card to add to this list.
I mean, or even just flashing in the Lord on your attack step and having a pseudo vial effect almost.
Yeah. The next card that I like that we like for this list is Jang Yu Wildcrafter. So this is going to be the first Jang Yu card that is legal in the United States for standard. So that is 2 and a green for legendary planeswalker. Has a static ability. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter has tap. Add 1 mana of any color. And then it has -1. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So it's very synergistic with itself. This is very synergistic with the version of Merfolk that has lots of deep root elites. that is putting lots of counters on your creatures. And then on top of that, just Kumena being able to dump a bunch of counters on everything kind of lets you maybe not go infinite, but definitely have lots of mana to your disposal.
Yes, I could see this being in that counters folk, to give that one a name, type of deck. When I saw the thing, I saw the -1 ability. 4 is essentially Benthic Biomancer. You, it's just nice to have, if you don't have a Merfolk in hand, which I don't know why you wouldn't, but you could drop him -1 and then, loot extra cards to get something that you need.
Yeah, it
Uh,
does have that added synergy for sure.
but other than that, aside from the turning all your creatures with +1/+1 counters on them into mana dorks, is the two like only good uses about this card. What you would replace for this, I don't know just yet, because again, you're having to fill up the 3-drop slot, which would be either Incongruity, Kumena, or Deeproot Waters, and all 3 of those cards tend to be the ones you would prefer over this.
Yeah, it is one of those things that once the full set is spoiled, I'm sure we'll all spend some time brewing together the best version of Merfolk, and I think Jiang Yu might be a part of it.
It it could very well be. I mean, when you drop them and you have 3 creatures or 2 creatures that you can cast, like your Merfolk Trickster that's in hand, um, is something I could see that happen. Like, let's say turn 1, Kumena Speaker. Turn 2, you've got the Merfolk Skydiver. And then turn 3, you play this guy and you give Kumena's Speaker a counter. You can either attack for 5 or leave those as blockers and then flash in like a Merfolk Trickster if you're on the defensive.
Yeah, so this does open up a good amount of opportunities for us. So we'll definitely keep an eye on Jiang Yu. The next one that you added, Dorian, is Teferi's Time Twist, and that is 1 and a blue for an instant. Exile target permanent you control. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. If it enters the battlefield as a creature, it enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So this is basically just a blink effect that also pumps it once it returns. And I think that this will take the place of Dive Down as the kind of go-to protect, like spot protection. And I do think this was a great addition to this list.
Yes. I like this because it harkens back to a block that I greatly enjoyed. I'm a huge fan of the Kamigawa block, and the spell Journey to Nowhere is this in blue form. Journey to Nowhere was white originally. Um, but yes, the ability to protect a creature and uh, have it where the odd part with this is more the fact that it costs 2 mana compared to Dive Down's 1. But you're not, wasting Dive Down um, to basically give your creature like 1/2 of Giant Growth. Whereas this thing, it exiles the creature and it'll come back at the end of turn, but you are now pumped up bigger than what it was originally, and that pump stays.
Yeah, it's a permanent pump.
Yes. One thing I can see it being kind of like a funny trick to use as well is you're blocking with, Benthic Biomancer. You flash him, and then he comes back at the end of your turn, or at the end of that turn, and you get to, loot a card you don't need away for something that's potentially better.
The other thing that's with this card is that with Deeper Delete, it triggers Deeper Delete again, so you get to put another counter on something.
Yes.
So Teferi's Time Twist is kind of it costs more obviously than Dive Down, but I think it serves a better purpose than Dive Down did.
That is true. If you are these kind of blink effects are fun. I could see it working side by side with like with Vivian in the deck.
Yeah, and it's target permanent, so you can exile a planeswalker you control to both a reset its loyalty, and to b stop it from removal, or maybe like if a player just all out attacks your planeswalker, then you can blink it, and it'll come back with full loyalty and no damage to it. So Teferi's Time Twist, I think, is really good.
Yes, then that would just be a really fun gotcha moment where it's like you had full out attack and you have maybe one blocker or whatnot, but then they go all out against like Vivian or one of the other planeswalkers we're about to mention, and then you're like, no.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is a good addition. Thank you for making sure to add that, because I definitely missed it over in my overlook on the set so far. The next one that I put in was Giant Growth, which is green for an instant. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Plus, it has Magic's Goodest Boy on the front. Mao.
Yes, I love the artwork on this one.
It's great art. It's good to have a giant good pupper on the front of a Magic card, and yeah, it's a good card. I mean, like, Giant Growth has been around in Magic for a long time, so there's not a lot to speak to it.
Oh no, it's been around since Alpha, and it keeps coming back for a reason.
Yeah, it's just good. I just thought, add it as a combat trick. There's not a lot to say, but Giant Growth is Giant Growth, and you might run a few of them. If you're playing like a pseudo Swolfolk deck, and it's just a good combat trick. That's it.
Yeah. If you're the kind of person that likes Dive Down but was like, I wish it just gave it power, this is the spell for you.
Oh yeah, for sure. Next up is another card that I added for. So these next two are kind of corner cases, I admit, for my Merfolk dabblings, if you will. And so we're just gonna go through these pretty quickly. Do you want to read this one, Dorian?
Yes. So for the one that you were talking about to go into your lawful folk deck, is the Teferi Time Raveler that was spoiled. Teferi is a 1 blue-white casting cost with 4 loyalty, and he has each opponent can. His static ability is each opponent can cast spells only anytime they could cast a sorcery. And he's got 2 activated abilities, +1, that is, until your next turn, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. And then a -3 of return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand, and then you draw a card.
So the reason that I added this is, number one, just that static ability forces your opponent to play on their turn, which I think is really important. In standard, it's very important because just with the amount of removal that they have, Settle the Wreckage is turned off. The flash enchantment, Seal Away is gone. There's just lots of options that control decks and standard have that are just completely out of their control from then on.
Yes, this shuts off counter spells as well.
Exactly. The other thing is the +1 ability turns off. It basically makes cards that were pushed to sorcery for reasons of power. It makes them instants again. Like cards that we would want at instant speed are now instant speed. So,
yes. So like incubation, you could do at the end of your opponent's turn. Look at the top 5 cards and pull the Merfolk that you want out of it.
Yeah, so hit a Lord or something like that. It's just something that I think for an all-around card is pretty good. I wouldn't say that this is like backbreaking for an aggro deck, but I think for a control deck, this would definitely be a good card to add in.
Yes, this is a card I would hate to see played against me and all, because that would shut off our Merfolk Tricksters. It would shut off like this Teferi's Time Twist and all. Depending on timestamps, it could shut off Vivian that we just talked about.
Well, Vivian is a activated ability, I think. So I think you could still do that. It says
So it's her static ability is the one that gives all our creatures flash for it all. But the way magic works is depends on timestamps when it comes to static abilities. If they directly oppose each other, the most recent one that came into play is the one that overrules everything else. It's like the way Blood Moon works. If we spreading seas and then someone Blood Moons, Blood Moon overrides spreading seas.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, and yes, by the way, I am a L1 certified judge, so that's why I know this random bits of information.
Well, it's good to have you on the show then, because I would have totally messed that up. So the next one is just real quick is Samit Tyrant Smasher for 2 Gruul, and that is basically you could pay either red or green. Creatures you control have haste. That's pretty good. And then it has a loyalty of 5. And Samit's -1 ability is target creature gets +2/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. Scry 1. So this would go into my Riot Folk deck that plays Rhythm of the Wild and 2 of Domri. Basically, the Domri is to either dig for a creature or just give add mana and give that creature Riot.
Hmm.
I think Samit is a really cool addition to that deck. Just giving your creatures haste. That's kind of the problem that Merfolk has. Like playing a bunch of creatures is fine, but they can't attack the turn they come in.
Oh no.
And so, I mean, Samit does cost 4, which is kind of prohibitive. But that's kind of when you need your creatures to be able to like hit the ground and turn sideways. Is like if you turn 6 or 7, draw a lord. Like you need to be able to drop it and go. So I think Samit it would be an interesting addition for that.
Yes. Hopefully we aren't going all the way to the late game with this, but just having the even if you drop this on turn 4 and you pump up one creature and can scry one, is still pretty good on its own.
Yeah, and even giving one of your unblockable creatures or one of your X-proof creatures this pump is also very strong as well.
Yes. But I mean, everyone just loves haste. So
Yeah, haste is pretty good. How do you feel about this set so far, Dorian?
I am liking it overall. I was really on the fence with how the marketing was, where it's like every pack has a planeswalker. I was trying to figure out like, are they all going to be taking up the rare slot? So I am kind of happy to see that there are uncommon planeswalkers, and part of me wants to take the uncommon ones and throw them in my cube.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I think to me, like at least with my discussions with Matt, it was like they have to do something with these planeswalkers. Like they can't like you said, you can't just have all of your rare slots taken up by planeswalkers. You have to do something, and it's like they either have to like make them uncommon or common, or they have to do something where like there's some sort of unique qualifier to them, like they're in addition to like the flip cards from Innistrad, where like they added that in addition to the
yes,
cards that were in the pack already. So like
yeah,
there had to be some sort of outlying qualifier to them.
no, and I like the design space that they had for it, where they're now giving the static ability of planeswalkers and then an activated ability depending on rarity. I think that's a really good innovation that is uh, a different way to approach planeswalkers and how you build your deck with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was like, I guess that's kind of more what I was alluding to with like they have to do something with these planeswalkers. Like basically they've made them enchantments.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's kind of a blending of the enchantment with the static ability, and then they also have some other abilities that enchantments normally couldn't have. So I really like how they're going forward with it.
Now, if only wizards could find just some way to design, maybe put on a planeswalker, but a way of getting rid of opposing planeswalker emblems.
Yeah, that would be definitely an interesting design space. I think we're maybe a year or two off from that. But
Yeah, it depends on how broken planeswalkers get.
yeah, we'll definitely we'll all be around to see it. So we'll see when that time comes. Remember that you can reach out and talk to us about these cards on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook is at FishCastMTG. You could reach me personally at Not Cody Smith on Twitter, and you could reach Dorian at
Crinkle Biscuit.
Crinkle Biscuit with a K.
Yep, Crinkle spelled with a K.
Yeah. So make sure to tell us what your favorite spoiler card from this set is, because this is a set that is very interesting due to the amount of planeswalkers that are involved. We could definitely see a lot of really cool design space and decks open up. So I'm really excited to hear what you all have to say. Dorian, do you have any other comments about the set?
For this set, other than, you're still live for having 3 Merfolk until we see the full spoiler. I really don't have much else to say for my part. I look forward to seeing what else gets revealed in the next couple weeks.
Believe me, I will rub it in Matt's face if we hit the 3rd Merfolk. If you have a long form question, feel free to email us at fishcastmtg@gmail.com. Our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt, and our logo and stream art was done by Ishton on Twitter, who has also done our recent tokens at cardamagegs.com, so make sure to find those. And our animated intro, of course, was done by Jake Boss MTG on Twitter. If you like what we're doing here, please rate and subscribe in the Apple or Google Play podcast app stores, and find us on Patreon at patreon.com/fishcastmtg. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you, Dorian, for coming on to sub for our on location co-host Matt, who could not be on for today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yep. Thanks again for the invite. Let's go ahead and see what Matt thinks about me replacing him as the host, since he plays Tron, and I'm an actual Merfolk player. So
you hear that, Matt? You're being called out. It's like one of those dance movies. So now it's on. And thank you very much for your time, and we will see you all next week.